So last night we gathered together in this room where there was candlelight flickering, people were gathered, wonderful music was shared. We gathered in the darkness, and in my sermon last night I mentioned that the night Jesus was born was also one of darkness too. There was darkness in the traveling and the long journey from Nazareth to Bethlehem. There was darkness surrounding the census and the registration that the Roman government was taking. In some sense, it all began in darkness. In the Gospel of Luke, the birth of Jesus was placed alongside this cosmic scale of importance with the census of Rome, but Quirinius or Caesar Augustus wouldn't have cared about the birth of that little baby. They cared about making sure that the empire was safe and secure. They cared, knowing what little I do about Roman history, about power, and they cared about money. In the big scheme of things, they didn't care about Jesus' birth or humble beginnings, being born in a stable in the back of an inn because there was no room, born from Mary in the middle of Joseph and later the shepherds who gathered round them, born so that good news might be brought to the people, so said the angels. The Romans would eventually care about Jesus, but not yet. God came to earth last night and slipped into the skin of baby Jesus in the most ordinary of beginnings, in the most ordinary of ways. As we come to worship on this Christmas morning, we're still reflecting on beginnings and on Jesus being born among us, but the catch is, it isn't such an ordinary beginning this morning. See, what we hear this morning is of the birth of Jesus. It's the beginning of Jesus' life, but it's told from the gospel writer John's point of view. And the gospel of John is complicated, it's sophisticated, and it has some of the most beautiful language in the world. But it doesn't start that simple. There are no angels, there are no shepherds or creches or mangers or inns or censuses. It starts like this. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. What has come into being was life, and the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. There's darkness, but not long, for because Jesus is the light of the world, Jesus shines brighter than the darkness and continues to do so even today. And so what we get this morning is the beginning of a new story. In the beginning takes us back to another story that starts that same way in the Bible, back to the story of creation itself, where God desires to interact with people and with creation so badly that God creates animals and plants and man and woman. This story that John begins is like that in every way, except this one is arguably a little bit more important. Because Jesus comes. Jesus is the very recreation, redemption, and renewal of creation, and God comes to show humanity God's very intention of always being in love with the world in and through Jesus, in and through human flesh. And so this morning we get majesty, we get greatness, we get light, we get love, we get flesh, we get blood, we get life. And the life was the light of all people. John says Jesus came to what was his own, and his own people did not accept him. But to those who believe in him, he gave the power to become the children of God. And in the end, as in the beginning, that is who we are. We are children of God. And I think this is as much an identity story as it is a birth story, both for Jesus and for us too. You see, John thinks very highly of Jesus, and Jesus and God think very highly of us and the world that God would even dare to come right smack dab in the middle of us in the first place. And so as we celebrate the beginning of Jesus' life today, we get to celebrate our own too. Now you can argue with me that I'm laying on this whole beginning and birth stuff so heavy because I'm so grateful this year for the birth of our daughter Lorelei. And part of me says, yeah, you'd be right. All right, I'll take that full criticism from you. But the other part of me says, no, this is exactly what incarnation, God becoming flesh, is all about. It's all about saying that we matter. It's all about saying that the world matters. For God coming in the flesh of Jesus means there's hope for us, and there's indeed more to this world that we can see and we can know. And God, at the same time, makes holy our created lives while also freeing us to live in the fragileness of life. Because let's face it, life is fragile. Life is both messy and exciting, both good and bad, both painful and joyful, both disappointing and wonderful, both short and long, both full of things we wish we could change and things that we would long to be no other way. God gives us the gift of Jesus, becoming flesh this morning, so that God would know both the pain and the joy, the hardship and the happiness that life can bring. From the beginning of everything, God promises to stand with us in the midst of all that we go through in life, no matter what that is. And Jesus fully shows us that God comes to dwell with us in the flesh. And I can't not quote my favorite translation of this from the Message Bible, from Eugene Peterson. He says this: "The Word, that's Jesus, became flesh and blood and moved into our neighborhood. We saw the glory with our own eyes, this one-of-a-kind glory, like Father, like Son, generous inside and out, true from start to finish." True from start to finish. See, the gift for us this Christmas morning is that God begins again in Jesus to do what God is about, to love in the most intimate way possible, to suffer, and to bring us grace upon grace. What that might look like will get fleshed out a little bit later, but this, here and now, is only the beginning. No one has ever seen God, not so much a glimpse. But this Jesus, the one-of-a-kind God expression who exists at the very heart of the Father, has made him plain as day. And that, dear friends, is the best gift we could get. Merry Christmas. Amen.